West speaks, we will have a few Q&As. As much as I hate to say this in a room of responsible adults, please be courteous, okay? And now, our speaker, Mr. Alan West.
She said turn your phones off. If your phone goes off while I'm talking, I will make you do push-ups out there in the rain, kind of like Lou Gossett Jr., again with Richard Gere and Officer and a Gentleman. So, what a pleasure and an honor to be back down here in Johnson County, to be here in Burleson, to see all my dear friends like Maggie Wright, you know, and Chris Fletcher, the mayor. I remember when we did that fundraiser, the very first one for Chris, and I'm glad to see he got that position. And I cannot not recognize my dear friend, Pastor Bruce Edwards. I thank you so much for being here, Pastor Bruce. Appreciate you. Absolutely love you back. What I'd like to do is take maybe about 15, 20 minutes and talk to you about thoughts, perspectives, insights, why I'm running for governor, and then open it up for questions from you all. But first, before I get to that, let me just kind of set the stage, because a lot of people always name, some people here may know who I am, some people don't. You know, I retired from the United States Army in 2004, right down the road at Fort Hood, Texas. My last duty assignment there. I spent 22 years in the United States Army. I was commissioned 31 July 1982 at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, the real UT. The other one is kind of like TU. I mean, it came after us, but anyhow. And I just had a great career. Stationed down there, 4th Infantry Division, Commander Battalion, and then I worked at the 3rd Armored Corps Headquarters. You know, my wife, her dad had served 24 years in the United States military, 2 tours of Vietnam as a combat infantryman. He was buried now in Arlington National Cemetery. He had lived here in San Antonio, Texas. He retired here as well. But after, you know, her dad for 24 years, married to me for 22 years, I turned to my wife and said, wherever you want to go, it's time for you to pick, you know, the next duty station, the next assignment. And so she's a brilliant woman. She has an MBA and a PhD. When we met, she was a business professor at Kansas State University. I was just a dumb old artillery guy. My dad taught me bury way up, and I did. I took his advice. And so she got a great offer from Raymond James. And so we ended up moving down to South Florida. And she's originally from Jamaica, and I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. So it was pretty good for our girls to finally have extended family to be close. But in 2014, I got the opportunity to come back here to Texas and work with a conservative think tank. And so we packed up and moved back up here. Both of our girls live here now. Our oldest is a physician assistant. They're in Carrollton, and she works at UT Southwestern. Our youngest, she is a care manager at a senior living facility up there in Plano, Texas. She lives in Oak Cliff on the south side. So we love being here in Texas. And I got to tell you, having been born and raised in Georgia, grew up and went to college in Tennessee, I can't think of another place better for me to be than in Texas. Why? Because think about it. Georgia and Tennessee, the relationship that they have with the great state of Texas is inseparable. Y'all seen that liberty or death flag that you wave here? That liberty or death flag was done by a little girl from Macon, Georgia. The Georgia Volunteers brought it out here to Texas when they came to fight. 5 members from Georgia are on the cenotaph. Their names down there at the Alamo. The very first vice president and the 3rd president of the Republic of Texas is a guy who has a university named after him. And he was from Georgia. His name is Lamar University. You know, just last week I was down in the city of Gonzales, and if you want to think about a very important day that is coming up, it's October the 2nd, 1835, where we started our fight for independence here. And one of the people that was there on October the 2nd of 1835 was a young man from Milledgeville, Georgia. His name was Colonel James Fannin. You also can remember that he was the guy that was massacred with the rest of his troops at La Bahia, just south of Goliad. So, and also think about former member of Congress from the state of Florida. There was another former member of Congress from the University of from Tennessee, who famously said, "May you all go to hell. I'm going to Texas," when he lost his congressional reelection. And history teaches us that he was the last person to have his life taken away from him at the Alamo. His name is David Crockett. There are 38 people from the state of Texas, the most names on the cenotaph down there of the 183 that fought so we could be here today. So there was a bond between the state that I was born and raised in, the state where I got my education from at the university, and Tennessee. What do we call We're called the volunteers, not tigers, not bears, or anything. Volunteers, that defines that great state. And so in getting back here, I will tell you that I had no intention of ever having anything to do with politics, because if you know my story, in 2012, Republicans redistricted me out of the congressional district that I represented, and I was the #1 target for Democrats in 2012. George Soros, know him well, $5 million he put against me. Nancy Pelosi, $3 million. And even had a group from San Francisco move down to South Florida and run a shadow campaign against me. And you know what? I take that as a badge of honor. A guy who had never been in politics, came out of the military, ran and won a congressional race. But it shows that soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen that are here, we all took an oath. That oath, like I said, 31 July 1982, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. We took that obligation freely without any purpose of evasion or mental reservation, so help me God. But the thing is that if you truly believe in those words, even though you have taken off the uniform, there's no statute of limitations on that oath. So when I sat back here in 2018 and I saw what happened in the state of Texas to Republicans, y'all remember the 2018 cycle?
Oh, yeah.
We lost 12 state house seats. We lost 2 U.S. congressional districts. We lost 2 state senate seats. We lost 56 judicial positions. And see, there's something when you're a soldier, when you're a warrior. We have a saying that a warrior always moves to the sound of the guns. And so when people came to me and said, Colonel, you need to think about getting back in this thing. You need to think about running for Congress, running for Senate. And then one lady by the name of Debbie Terry, who was on the state Republican Executive Committee, said, why don't you think about running for chairman of the Republican Party of Texas? Because we need someone that can bring us together and fight back against the progressive socialist left. And that's why I decided to come out of my little political retirement and step up and be the chairman. And think about what you all accomplished in the 2020 election cycle. The Democrats brought in $250 million to flip Texas. You heard it, that's what they wanted to do. They targeted the Texas State House. Why not? The election cycle prior, they won 12 seats. They only needed 9. And most of those 9 seats were focused up here in North Texas. They didn't win a single one. They focused on 10 to 11 congressional districts that they wanted to win. Several of those congressional districts were up here in North Texas. Guess what? They didn't win a single one. We went down and took our message into the Rio Grande Valley. And guess what? The big story coming out of November 2020, we flipped the Rio Grande Valley. To the point where now, they're just astonished because more and more Hispanic Texans are starting to lean toward the Republican Party, our conservative principles and values, because we engaged them. They had never seen a chairman of the Republican Party in the Rio Grande Valley before. So what happens now? We have a mayor in McAllen, Texas, first time in 36 years Republican. We have the youngest city council member in the state of Texas, in Kerrville, Texas, 19 years of age, Roland Garcia, who took on a progressive socialist and beat her by 13 percentage points. That's what we can do when we go on offense and we take our message into the places where we believe that the left is strong, because they're not. Anyone in the military will tell you, you don't win on defense. Chris Fletcher stood up against a person that was a leftist here as your mayor. And everyone was telling Chris Fletcher, it couldn't happen. Who's your mayor now? But that's what I want to do. And so there are some people out there saying, well, you know, you've just been planning all this all along. Hell no. You think I want to run around all over the state of Texas and not be at home with my 4-month-old grandson and chilling out and having fun with him? But the bottom line is this is about what I pass on to him. And what you pass on to your children and to your grandchildren. And so there were people that said, hey, Colonel, why don't you think about trying to say, why don't you step up? Because when we look at our legislative priorities, in Texas, we still have taxpayer-funded lobbying. In Texas, we can't pass school choice. In Texas, we could not pass legislation to protect our monuments and our historical markers. You know what's going on down there in the Cenotaph. They're talking about moving the Cenotaph off the battlefield and turning it into an amusement park. What the hell, okay? But the most disturbing thing is that here in the state of Texas, we are chemically and physically castrating our children. Puberty blockers, hormonal therapies. The fastest growing medical facilities in the state of Texas. We have seen 17 gender reassignment surgery clinics open up in Texas. And we cannot get anything passed to stop that. Do you know that just recently it was signed into law that we're going to have nuclear waste stored in the Permian Basin? Now, I'm not a real smart guy. I used to jump out of airplanes. If you're, Air Force guys are really smart. But how much sense does it make to put nuclear waste just below the surface in a place that is the Saudi Arabia of natural gas and makes the United States of America energy independent? What happens when you have some type of catastrophic incident? And the people out there in West Texas didn't want it to happen. But yet somehow down in Austin, they made it happen. Now, see, when I was in Congress, we spent $4 billion to create this facility out in New Mexico called Yucca Mountain for all of this nuclear waste. And now the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, because Barack Obama canceled it then, now Joe Biden and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is going to put and store nuclear waste here in the state of Texas. Maybe y'all didn't see the little press release that I put out today, but our Texas National Guard is being told that they have to get a shot. Now, our Texas National Guard is under the command and control of the governor of the state of Texas. The only way that you're not under control of the governor of the state of Texas is if you're on Title 10 or Title 32 orders, which means you've been activated, you're under federal control. But now all of a sudden, we're telling our own military force, the Texas Military Department, they have to get a shot in the arm. The exact same Texas military force that we are not putting down on the border to keep people from coming into the state of Texas illegally. And oh, by the way, did you see the interview with Secretary Mayorkas? Well, maybe there's 10,000. Well, no, I think it might be 12,000. No, I think it's 15,000. They came into the state of Texas illegally. They weren't told to get a COVID test. They weren't mandated to get a shot. And now we find out that Mayorkas comes back yesterday and says that 1 in 5 of those individuals that came in are infected with some type of illness, disease, or what have you. And we also have these Afghan refugees that are bringing in measles and tuberculosis. Why do you run for governor? This is about protecting Texas. This is about moving to the sound of the guns. Because so goes Texas, so goes America. So goes America, so goes the world. Therefore, so goes Texas, so goes the free world. And that's why people are looking to us to stand up and say, stop what is happening on the border. That's why the people that are living down there along the border are saying, please, someone help us. When you look into the eyes of a woman like I did last week, and she's got tears in her eyes, because she says, everyone's abandoned us. The federal government is not doing anything, and our state government is not doing anything. There are people afraid to go out at night. They're afraid to let their children go out on their own property. Their property is being ransacked. Their livestock are being killed. There are illegal immigrants that are living in barns. They're living in deer stands. And we're not doing anything about it. We're arresting them for trespassing. Well, you can't really shoot. Okay, we're being recorded here. And I will end up on MSNBC. Okay? West is a rabble rouser. That's how the left rolls, But the bottom line is not about shooting, but it's about putting a deterrent force. Hey, let's have a little audience participation. How many of y'all picked up one of those constitutions out there? Okay? Now open it up. You got one? Now open it up. I want someone to open it up to Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. Come on. Let's go, flip. You didn't get it, just put it on the floor. Article 4, Section 4. Stand up when you get it. I want you to read it. Because this is a little education time. All right, stand up. Here you go. Article 4, Section 4.
Okay. Ensures a republic representative form of government and promises the federal government will protect states against invasion.
That's in the Constitution. The two things that the federal government is supposed to do is to provide us a republican form of government, which means to abide by the rule of law and individual rights and freedoms and liberty and sovereignty. And the other thing is to protect us, every state, each state in the union, from invasion. Now, I want someone to find Article 1, Section 10, Clause number 3. When I say clause number 3, that means paragraph number 3. Article 1, Section 10, paragraph 3. Clause 3. Come on, someone's good. What do you want me to do? If you find out, I'll give you a cupcake. It can't be, because I didn't get one. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3. Come on, folks. Yes, sir. Shout it out.
No state shall, without the consent of Congress, elect any duty of tonnage to troops or ships of war, not a peace, intermediate agreement or compact with another state, or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded, or in such imminent danger as not delayed.
There it is. Texas is a sovereign state. The Constitution says here's the responsibility of the federal government to protect every state in the Union against invasion. The Constitution also says, if actually invaded, these are the things that the state can do when there's imminent danger. Drug trafficking crisis, imminent danger. Human and sex trafficking crisis in Texas, imminent danger. We're the #1 state for human and sex trafficking. Top 2 cities in the United States of America for sex trafficking, Dallas and Houston. Public health crisis. When you see this spike in COVID, why do you think we got a spike in COVID? Because we're admitting people to coming here that are bringing in COVID. We're not testing them. So why are we not taking the action? That's why you run for governor. Right. Because you've got to understand how you control a border. 30 years ago, I was over in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, protecting the border of Kuwait. And why can't we protect our own border here in the United States of America? I protected the border in Iraq in 2003 as a battalion commander. I spent 2.5 years in Afghanistan trying to protect their border from the Taliban coming across in Pakistan. And if you don't think that what happened in Afghanistan will have dire consequences for us here in Texas, if you don't understand that the cartels, who are a transnational narco-criminal terrorist organization, will work with anyone that provides them money, you will find Taliban, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, whomever, coming across that border into the state of Texas. And that's going to cause a problem for our law enforcement because we have tied their hands. They can't even deal with this properly. That's what we have to do. Our constitutional officers, our sheriffs, our constables need to have the right and the ability to arrest, detain, and deport people since the federal government is not going to be doing it. That's one of the reasons that you run for governor. Why do you run for governor? So you designate the cartels as what they are, a terrorist organization. Already working with Iran, already working with Hezbollah and Hamas. You go after their financing. You go and freeze their assets in banks. You go after the people that are creating these stash houses. You take away those assets, and then you turn those assets into money for your border security fund and your operations. That's how you do it. On our interstate highways, maybe some of our state highways, see a lot of tour buses recently, don't you? Those ain't tourists. Those are illegal immigrants. And those illegal immigrants are being put on buses and planes all across the state of Texas by non-governmental organizations, 501c3, not-for-profit organizations that are getting federal grant money, not the Border Patrol. They are working for the Biden administration, who is unconstitutionally implemented an open borders policy. You know what you do? Catholic charities, all these organizations, you revoke their licenses. They have to register and get a license to operate in the state of Texas. That's why you run for governor. This is not about writing letters anymore. This is not about begging permission of the federal government. This is understanding that you don't bring a plastic spoon to a gunfight. If you're in a gunfight, you bring a freaking gun, okay? Folks here know about HR 1. Okay? Everybody here, Lone Star Patriots, you gotta know what HR 1 is. Because there is no coincidence about what the left is doing. HR 1, which is passed the House of Representatives, said that there will be no picture ID to vote in the United States of America. That there will be no voter registration roll review in the United States of America. That there will only be mail-in ballots, no more going to polling locations or anything in the United States of America. Online voter registration, same-day voter registration, same-day voting, and illegal immigrants can vote. $3.5 trillion bill that is up there right now that they're debating includes amnesty for illegal immigrants. That's okay, I used that word. HR 4, how many people know what HR 4 is? H.R. 4 is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. You know what H.R. 4 says? That no state in the United States of America can pass their own election laws unless they get approval from the federal government through the Department of Justice. That's what they want to say. This is what they're trying to do, because what do they realize? Bill Clinton in 1994, first midterm election, lost 53 congressional seats. Contract with American New Gingrich. Barack Obama, first midterm election, 2010, lost 63 congressional seats, the most post-World War II. Whose first midterm election is coming up in November 2022? The only way that they keep this from going south is they have to get in and get a new voting bloc. And that's why you see this open borders agenda. The end of this month means the end of fiscal year 2021. In fiscal year 2021, we have had 1.5 million illegal immigrants apprehended in the United States of America. Apprehensions does not mean deportations. That means they've been released further into the country. But even more disturbing, there's anywhere from 350 up to maybe 450,000 what are called getaways. Those are the people that they never track, never find, but they know that they came across the border. And they're in our communities. And oh, by the way, in the El Paso sector, five people on the terrorist watch list that we did catch. How long will it take? There have already been cartel members firing across the border, across the Rio Grande, into Texas, firing shots at Border Patrol agents. Last time I checked, when you fire shots across an international border, boundary, it's an act of war. That's why this old soldier is coming to you saying that I'm willing to stand in the gap. I'm willing to fight for you once again to defend the sovereignty of the Lone Star State. If we lose the Lone Star State, there is no United States of America. That's why they're going to keep coming, they're going to keep coming. But just the same as we defeated them and crushed them in November of 2020, we can do it again. And all I want to do is defeat them. With all that being said, what are your questions? Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts on the most recent infrastructure bill, including red flag law language?
Red flags are unconstitutional. I mean, when you get to the point where you can go into someone's house without a warrant, that's the thing about red flag laws. And understand this, that you don't ever know who filed a red flag complaint against you. Sadly, we have Republicans that are standing up and support red flag laws. And so that's the means by which they undermine your ability to have this, okay? Because somehow someone all of a sudden says, I think Alan is a little bit unnerved, and I know that he has some guns over there, and so you may want to go and, take those guns. And guess what? Under red flag laws, I have to prove that I am not guilty. And I have to pay to go into court to get my weapons back. That's what red flag laws end up doing. So no, this is unconstitutional, but the left is doing every single thing possible. We passed HB 97. Y'all know what HB 97 is? It's right along with the constitutional carry. HB 97 says that if you manufacture a weapon suppressor here in the state of Texas, that a Texas citizen can buy that suppressor. Not someone from outside the state, it has to stay here in the state because that is in concert with the Commerce Clause. But now the ATF is saying that even if you produce that here in the state of Texas and a legal law-abiding Texas citizen buys that so that you can bypass this whole tax stamp thing, you gotta wait 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 months, that the ATF is still going to arrest a citizen and the FFL person that sold them that suppressor. See, that is what happens when you don't study the Declaration of Independence. Now, if you don't understand a lot of the grievances that Thomas Jefferson listed in the Declaration of Independence are happening right now. That's why you run for governor, to stop this agenda from the left from being able to come in and undermine our sovereignty as a state. And if you haven't seen the Commerce Clause, you should read the Commerce Clause. If you haven't read the Supremacy Clause, please read the Supremacy Clause. Very important 2 words in the Supremacy Clause. Because people always say, hey, Carl West, you really can't do that because the federal government is supreme over the states. Not so fast, my friends. Number 1, you got the 10th Amendment. And the 10th Amendment says that all of those powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states and to the people. But the Supremacy Clause said that the federal government is only supreme over the states as long as they're doing things that are pursuant thereof. Two very important words. Pursuant thereof to the Constitution of the United States of America. We're not supposed to be ruled by edicts, orders, mandates, and decrees. That's not constitutional. Where do I stand on seceding? Very important question. I believe that people here in the state of Texas should have the right to be able to vote on that issue. No one should take away your electoral ability. And that's why I support HB 1359. But I don't want to see Texas leaving the United States of America. Why? I think it's important for the Lone Star to illuminate the other 49 and to lead the United States of America. So I want us to lead. I want us to show every other state what it looks like to stand up against an onerous and intrusive federal government. And if the federal government then tries to usurp our authority, then it's game over. And that's what we got to get people to understand. But you know something? Let me tell you about the left. It's kind of like bullies. You know, I grew up in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia. A bully is real tough until you smack them in the mouth. Right. Remember what Mike Tyson used to say? Everyone talks a lot of smack until the first round when I hit them in the mouth. If we hit the left in the mouth, and again, I'm talking figuratively. Figuratively. Okay? It's a metaphor. Maybe you people on the left don't understand a metaphor. But when you hit them back, they retreat. But see, the problem is that we're always the ones that retreat. Can you hold this for a minute? Let me read you something. See, the Army taught me when you're not real smart, you write it down on 3x5 cards, and you carry it wherever you go. Let me read you something, because this really explains who we are. The uncontested absurdities of today are the accepted slogans of tomorrow. They come to be accepted by degrees, by dint of constant pressure on one side and constant retreat on the other, until one day when they are suddenly declared to be the country's official ideology. You know when that was written? That was written in the 1950s by Ayn Rand. See, where we are in America, it did not happen overnight. Where we are in America, this has been 50, 60, 70 years. What did the left do? The left took over every school of journalism on our college and university campus. What did the left do? They took over every school of education department on a college and university campus. And what are they producing? They're producing the next generation of little progressive socialists, media, journalists, and also teachers. And look what is going on in our schools. And that's why I tell folks, mayor, city council, school board, county commission, constable, sheriff. Tip O'Neill once said, all politics are local. And the most important thing that you can do is win at the local level, because that's what the left is doing. The left is moving into Texas, into our major urban population centers, and they're spreading out into the surrounding counties. Johnson County, a lot of construction going on down here. Burleson, a lot of construction going on down here. You better continue to win at the local level so that they don't have control over what is going on. Election integrity, who makes the rules in Johnson County? The county. As far as what type of machines, whether they be hooked to the internet, whether they be a paper audit trail, you know, based upon who has the majority on the county commission. Those are the ones that have the majority of the election judges. We got to start thinking about what happens locally, because that's the foundation and that's the key. Yes, ma'am.
So, what are we going to do about medical tyranny?
What we're going to do about medical tyranny, exactly what I said. You say no, and you hold any private sector company responsible. You know, I'm kind of tired of hearing about how great Ron DeSantis is doing. Marco Rubio moment. I'm kind of, tired of hearing what Ron DeSantis is doing, but he's leading. And so when he's saying that he's going to fine private sector companies that are telling people they either get a jab in the arm or they lose their employment, especially in the medical profession, this is abject tyranny. Look at what is happening in New York. You have so many medical professionals that are quitting that they're talking about bringing in and activating National Guard members to come in and backfill the medical professionals. And everything. Police officers, members of the military, SEAL teams. You have 25% of our SEAL teams, the most elite warriors. They are modern day Spartans. They're being told that you won't be able to deploy unless you get a shot. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to train the U.S. Navy SEAL. And now because they don't want to get a shot, no, these are studs. The most physically fit people we got in the military. And you tell them they gotta get jabbed in the arm? When only 20 people in the entire United States military have lost their lives attributed to COVID, but almost 100 have had medical complications and lost their lives because of taking the shot. And like I said, here in the state of Texas, what has happened? Our Texas military, National Guard, being told they have to get a shot. So that's why you've got to have someone that stands up and says, you're not coming across this line. You're not coming to the state of Texas. You're not going to tell people that you know what is better for their body than they do. And any person that is here in a business that wants to try to fire someone for taking away their liberty to control their own body, we're not having that. That's not consistent with Texas values. You got to send that type of message. Yes, sir.
Social media and their censorship, where do you stand on that?
Well, one of the things we got to stop doing is allowing these companies to move out of Silicon Valley into here, the state of Texas, and giving them all these taxpayer-funded benefits and subsidies to do so. Oracle, Google, what have you. But what have they done in North Dakota, for one, again, in Florida? They have allowed for citizens to be able to come together in class action lawsuits and sue these social media organizations. Why don't we do the same thing here? And so that's what we need to do. Open them up to you to be able to go after them so that they are not allowed to come out and censor you. Look, I would have never thought that here in the United States of America, that people would not be able to say and enjoy their First Amendment rights.
Right.
Think about what Facebook did. What's the is it Instagram they own? Yeah. No, the Twitter's not there. I think Facebook has Instagram. But think about this. The mother of one of those 13 that lost her son, they took her off of Instagram. This woman had just lost her son, and you're kicking her off of your social media platform? See, that's when you stand up and say, we're not having you in the state of Texas if you're going to continue down this path. So again, we got to stand up to these folks. Like I said, stop bringing the plastic spoon to a gunfight.
How would you fix civil asset forfeiture laws?
Civil asset forfeiture laws. Well, first and foremost, when it comes to the cartels, I want to take their stuff, and so they forfeit. But I think that, again, a person is innocent until proven guilty. And so I don't think that we should be taking people's assets. And I kind of have a recent experience with this. You cannot arrest and charge someone for something you don't have the evidence of. And then you cannot treat someone as they're guilty. You know, my wife was facing about $3,000 of expenses because she drank lemonade. She was going to have to, before anything happened, any thing had come out, she was going to have to get a device put in her car that she would have to blow in order for her car to start. She was going to be told that she could not leave the state of Texas, and she's a financial advisor. She has clients everywhere. She couldn't leave the state of Texas unless she checked in for the bail sponsor. This should not be happening. That's a complete violation of Fourth Amendment rights. So everything is already on the books. We don't need new laws. We just need to adhere to the laws. And so that's what we need to do, is stop treating people as guilty before they're innocent until proven. And that's one of the key things. Look, our law enforcement officers are under a lot of pressure. But you got bad soldiers, bad lawyers, bad Marines, bad everything. And so what we have to do in order to protect our good law enforcement officers, we've got to make sure that the bad law enforcement officers aren't there. The bad judges aren't there. You got a problem down in Houston, in Harris County. You know that you have a 1 in 900 chance of being a victim of a violent crime in Harris County. Because you have judges in Harris County that are releasing violent felons, criminals, on personal recognizance bonds because they just feel like doing it. One felon said he was afraid of getting COVID in the jail. So they let him out. And you know what he did? Within 48 hours, he was in a gunfight with constables down in Harris County. Luckily, those constables had been to the pistol range, and they shot him dead.
Would you go after the DAs who seem to be going rogue, like down in Austin when that man, I believe it was either last year or 2 years ago, when Antifa member pointed a rifle at him in his car and he popped him dead?
Well, that wasn't, you mean the DAs there locally?
They just recently very quietly started trying to file charges on him for murder.
Well, no, I'm saying it was there in Travis County.
Yeah.
And so absolutely right. Look, you know, I don't know if y'all saw the case, but it was a young Army sergeant from Fort Hood, Texas. He was downtown in Austin, and Antifa guy comes up, points an AK-47 at him in his vehicle. Probably a bad idea to point an AK-47 to a combat veteran, and he dropped it. Because, you know, the whole time for talk and negotiation, that's going on. And so there were no charges brought against him until the Travis County people, Austin, they brought the charges against him. And so I've already stood up and said that, you know, the governor should go in and pardon this guy right now and say, leave him alone, this is done. Because this guy, this was self-defense. Okay? You point an AK-47 at me sitting in my vehicle, I'm going to practice my range time on you. So we, you know, that's why you have a Second Amendment. And if you look at the video, prior to this guy being shot, he said that he was going to go out with his AK-47 and he was going to point at someone to scare and intimidate them because he knew they were too chicken, you know what, to do anything about it. Ran into the wrong guy.
The bill came across your desk to eliminate property taxes. Would you sign it?
This is what we need to do with property taxes. Okay, first and foremost, and I will get you to understand my thoughts. Property tax in the state of Texas, 6th highest in the United States of America. How many people here have ever read the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx? Okay, that's another thing we can have the crew read here. Okay, Communist Manifesto. 2 points about property taxes in Texas that directly relate to Marxist economic theory. Number one is progressive tax. That's the first person that ever talked about a progressive tax. The more that you earn, the more that you have, the more you pay the taxes. Second thing, elimination of private property rights. That's what the property taxes are here in the state of Texas. You can pay off your land, you can pay off your mortgage, never on your home. So we got to get away from that. First thing that I will do, of course, we got to have property tax relief until we get to transitioning away from property tax. And how do you get the property tax relief? Every single year we have a budget surplus when we come out. And right now it's $7 billion. We need to codify in the law that 80 to 90% of the budget surplus will go towards at the state level. I can't do what is necessary at the city level, but at the state level is the maintenance and operations fund for the independent school districts. So that money goes to pay down the maintenance and operations fund for the independent school districts, which provides you property tax relief. You codify that in the law. The other thing that we need to do is go through the state government down there, find all the fraud, the waste, the abuse, the redundant programs, the duplicative agencies, and we start cutting that budget, and that's more property tax relief. But this is the bottom line. How did we do taxation in the United States of America prior to 1917, when we created the income tax?
Excise tax.
Consumption-based tax. It was based upon what you bought in goods and services. What do we call that today? We call it the fair tax. So what I would like to do is to start 2023, the 88th legislative session, is to bring up a consumption-based tax plan for the state of Texas, to get that passed in the legislature, and get it on the ballot in that November election on the issues, okay, the ballot initiative, so that you can vote on this, because you have to make the decision yourselves. But I think that we can have implemented in the state of Texas a consumption-based, a fair tax system that gets us away from the property tax system that we currently have. And until we get to the point where that fair tax is implemented, we continue to have the property tax relief for you that brings down what you see as far as your bill, the 60% that goes to the state. So that's what my plan is, and I think we can get some economists together to make sure that the lower income, because we don't want to be regressive against them, but everyone pays in a fair tax. You don't get to hide. And so that's the whole point of it. Let me tell you the whole thing about a wall.
What was your question?
Do I plan on finishing a wall? How many miles of border does Texas share with Mexico? 1,254 miles. How many miles of the Trump border wall have been completed? 145. So you're talking about 1,100 miles. So a border wall like that, it's not the panacea. That's why you have to have boots on the ground. You have to have ground surveillance laser systems that can trigger you and you can get people to vector into an area. That's why you got to have aerial surveillance systems. But what you can do with a physical border obstacle, you don't see the Great Wall of China or Hadrian's Wall from Roman Emperor Hadrian. You don't have to have this long, contiguous wall for 1,254 miles. But what you do is you have sections of this obstacle, this physical barrier that forces people to come into channel points where you can control folks that are coming in. And therefore, you can specifically put your assets on certain places on the ground, and people don't have the ability to circumvent you or go around you. That's how I think. I would like to see an integrated border security system instead of just saying we're going to build a 1,254-mile wall. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Well, what's your problem on our Texas border was to prevent New Mexico?
I don't care about New Mexico. I'm the governor of Texas. They figured out the plan. No, you ain't coming in here. Because like I said, we're going to empower our sheriffs. We're going to empower our constitutional officers. And remember that they are different from the people that are appointed to be police chiefs or police, because these guys abide by the Constitution. They're elected by you all. And we're going to empower them that when they run into someone that is here illegally, boop, they get rid of it. Okay? So, you know, they want to try to come around through New Mexico and come in. Well, we're just going to make sure they can't do it. Okay? Yes, sir.
Speaking of immigration, what things can we do to destroy the lure, the enticement?
That's very simple. We stop it. I mean, there should not be taxpayer-funded benefits. Absolutely. There should not be taxpayer-funded benefits for people that are here illegally. Here in the state of Texas, we give illegals in-state tuition. That's why you run for governor, because these are Republicans that did that. And so you've got to stop. I call them the magnets. And when you tell people that, no, you're not going to come in here, no, you're not going to get the benefits, when you tell people, this is what we're going to do, if you're here illegally and you're working under the table and you're sending back the remittances to Mexico, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Honduras, we're going to tax those remittances. They do it in Oklahoma. Why can't we do it here? And guess what? That money that we get off the taxation of the remittances they're sending illegally, that goes into our border security fund. And so that's how we generate revenue for this thing. And so that's the message we have to send. We are closed for business when it comes to legal immigration.
Being uncomfortable with asset forfeiture, with what you said you wanted to do with the cartels.
I don't give a damn about the cartels. Their assets are mine. Okay? When you designate the cartels as a transnational narco-criminal terrorist organization, that means that they do not have the ability to have their resources, their funding, or anything here. If you are working with the cartels, they're a terrorist organization, I'm taking your stuff. Okay? That's just bottom line. You got to separate people from being part of what they're doing, because the cartels are advertising on social media for people to go down and be observers. They know exactly what's going on our side of the border. The cartel, who are the real estate agents that are selling them stash houses? And so, guess how we defeated the Columbia County cartels? We went after the people that were aiding and abetting them financially here in the United States of America. And that's the exact same thing we're going to do here. So the message, I mean, just to say, if you know someone that is working with Taliban, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, what have you, I mean, we go after them, right? We're going to go after these folks too. That's it. We have to send that message. Yes, sir. Now I'll come back to you.
Eliminate the demand for their products.
You know, there's a lot of things that I can do, but I can't raise your children. I can't raise you all. And so in Proverbs 22:6 it says, train up a child in the way that they should go, so that when they grow old, they shall not depart from it. I never saw my parents, they never smoked, never drank, nothing. I never smoked, never drank in my life. Drugs, absolutely not. So what I need you to do is to talk to your kids. We're losing almost 100,000 fentanyl. 8 to 10 times a day, fentanyl is flown across that border, across the Rio Grande, by drone, dropped off here in the state of Texas for their mules, the people that are working with the cartels, to come and pick up and further distribute. This is very deadly. Not to mention the methamphetamines and all of that. All this is being manufactured down there. So I need you to talk in your communities and talk to your kids that drugs is not a good thing. And fentanyl will kill you, drop you dead, okay? So I need you to step up and do that too. If you want to talk about increasing the demand, I can stop the supply, but you all have to help me stop the demand. Yes, ma'am. No, right here, I thought.
I was wondering why no one, why the people who hire illegals never go to jail.
Well, I mean, what's that thing, E-Verify? That's one of the things we should have. Look, I know that there are farmers, I know there are many people that could use that additional labor. And let me tell you one of the things that the federal government is doing. Who would ever thought that we live in a country where we would pay people to stay at home and not work? And so if you're a business owner, I mean, you gotta try to keep your business going. I mean, once upon a time when I was a kid, I didn't see anybody come in, you know, with a lawn crew. I was the lawn crew. My dad gave me a lawnmower and a water hose and a bucket. And on weekends, guess what I did? I cut grass, I raked leaves, I washed cars. And look what has happened now. See, it comes back again. You want your kids not to grow up and go to drugs and everything. Teach them responsibility. Teach them to go out there. You know, that neighbor would really need you to mow the grass. And you can earn maybe $10, $15. That's how you teach them responsibility. So we have a federal government that once again is creating an incentive to tell, you know, certain people, groups of people to not go out and work. And unless you want to see your business fold, you got to try to get employees. And we don't have the E-Verify system, so yeah, they're hiring people that are here illegally. But what we can do is tax those remittances that they're sending back to those home countries. And we got to stop giving people money to do nothing. Just the same as, you know what really screwed up our children, sir? When we start giving them things called participation trophies.
What can you do about sanctuary cities in Texas?
Oh, we cut off funding. I make it very painful for you to do that. And I don't think that we have made it painful for these leftist cities. I mean, that's what we have. We have these spots of blue inside the state of Texas. Texas has 254 counties. I've been to 230 of them. But 254 counties. But where do you see the blue in Texas? Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, El Paso. And that's where these people are putting in these unconstitutional policies. So guess what you do at the state level? You start to squeeze the orange. You cut off the funding that goes to them. Because again, you cannot have these sanctuaries of unconstitutional actions within your state. And we just don't do a good job of doing that and holding them to accountable for them. So, just the same as with these school districts that want, you gotta do push-ups. So gotta do push-ups. Oh yeah. It's on, baby. It's on. 10, 1-0. We're waiting.
Would you consider?
No, stop. If you have a heart attack, then I'll be blamed, okay? Get up.
Would you consider a way for law enforcement that's dealing with the border situation, they have to get into a legal fight? They've got all waivers of any type of legal action on board.
If they are engaging with people that are firing at them, it's a very simple rule of engagement. You have the right to protect yourself. And you know, I don't think you need to ask for qualified immunity.
But right now they're getting mixed messages.
Well, they're not gonna have a missed message from
Can we
me.
codify that with their protection?
If someone is coming across our border, if someone has come across the border into the state of Texas and they are armed, that is called an unlawful insurgent. That is called an unlawful enemy combatant. They have crossed an international border boundary with a weapon. I ain't asking questions. You drop the weapon, then we can maybe talk. But if you take that weapon and put it into a firing mode, it's lights out. And we're going to stand behind our law enforcement to do that. You know, there was a law enforcement officer that was shot out on Interstate 40 out in West Texas by a cartel member. He stopped him on a routine stop, guy was speeding or whatever. And when he came around, cartel member shot him and he took off. See, again, we got to send that message. We're not going to allow that to happen here. We're going to protect our law enforcement. Our law enforcement, they're on a battlefield. Okay, it's the drugs, it's the human and sex trafficking, it's all these things that they're dealing with. They're dealing with terrorism. And so we've got to stand behind them and make sure they have the right rules of engagement, just the same as we do with our folks that are deployed overseas. Yes, ma'am, first question. Some of y'all already asked a question. I'm spreading questions around. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yes, sir. How would you deal with, foreign entities coming in buying large swaths of?
Oh, sure, it's very simple. We passed a law in the 87th legislative session called the Foreign Investment Protection Act, Foreign Infrastructure, Texas Infrastructure Protection Act. It is supposed to protect us from people that have ties to enemies of the United States of America, like China, from coming in here and doing exactly what we have seen happen. There is no reason why a guy who used to be a member of the Chinese People's Liberation Army, who has contacts and a relationship with the Communist Chinese Party, buying up a large swath of land down in South Texas, right there near Del Rio, right there near Laughlin Air Force Base, which is one of the major training centers for Air Force pilots, and he wants to put in wind turbines that are 700 feet high. Okay, let me tell you, a training jump in the military is 800 feet. Why do you need a 700-foot high wind turbine or tunnel? Guess what? It's along the flight path, and it overlooks that airbase. And so we should not have it. Furthermore, let me tell you, how many people have heard of ZTE and Huawei?
Yeah.
Okay, ZTE and Huawei, two Chinese telecommunications firms. They both have headquarters right over here. ZTE has a headquarters in Richardson, Texas, which is the second largest tech hub outside of Austin. And Huawei has one in Plano, Texas. It's very simple. If you have ties to a country that is a geopolitical foe of the United States of America, then you're a geopolitical foe of the great state of Texas. And we're not going to allow you to have a foothold here in the state of Texas. And I guarantee you there's a reason why you have a telecommunications firm located here in North Texas. Just the same as you remember the Chinese consulate down in Houston. And they were burning all of their documents about 4 or 5 months ago. So we don't allow this to happen here in Texas. You know what I want to do? I want to have better economic relationships with Taiwan. I really want to piss off the Chinese, okay? And so you have better economic relations with Taiwan. Look at, oil and gas, liquefied natural gas, things of that nature. Semiconductors. I'd like to see Taiwan have semiconductor manufacturing here in the state of Texas instead of us worried about China. I'd like to see us go into other countries where we can have our supply chains, or even bringing those supply chains back here to Texas. You know one of the goals that I have for Texas? I want Texas to be the #1 state in the country, maybe even the world, for the gun manufacturing industry.
So where do you stand on critical race theory?
It's stupid. Look, we're not going to allow that. We're not going to allow. You know what? We don't have an education system. We have a system of indoctrination. How many people know about what happened in South Lake, Texas?
Yes.
South Lake, Texas is the model for how to defeat critical race theory, cultural competency action plan. They took it over themselves. They said, we're going to win back our school board. They stood up the South Lake Families PAC. They resourced themselves. They went out and they recruited candidates. They funded those candidates. They won 2 school board seats. They're about to win another in a special election, and they got the other school board seat targeted in next May. That's how you do it. It starts with winning the most important elected position in the United States of America, which is school board. And let me tell you how stupid critical race theory is. I was born in a blacks-only hospital 60 years ago. Born in a blacks-only hospital, and can become a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, command a battalion of 600 in combat, when my dad was only a corporal in the segregated army in World War II. To become a member of the United States House of Representatives, to represent the highest per capita income zip code in the United States of America at that time, Palm Beach Island. Oh, by the way, there's a really little guy, has a little house on Palm Beach Island. I was his congressional representative. A kid born in a blacks-only hospital in 1961. When I was born, blacks could not go on Fort Lauderdale Beach. 50 years later, I'm the congressional representative of Fort Lauderdale Beach. I'm sitting down and I had dinner, not once, not twice, but 3 times, with a conservative, iconic figure who was one of my constituents, a man by the name of Rush Limbaugh. But yet I was born in a blacks-only hospital. See, that's the message that we have to get out and send. How many people here have seen the documentary Uncle Tom? Okay, homework assignment. Y'all need to come together and show the documentary Uncle Tom to every single person in the Lone Star Patriots.
Amen.
Because you have to understand the history of systemic racism in the United States of America. It ain't Republicans. All right. Last question. Get you out here before the storm hits. Yes, sir.
When you speak to school choice, where the money follows.
I'm a product of school choice. How many folks have ever been to the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, and visited Ebenezer Baptist Church and seen the final message by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? That's my neighborhood. There were two public schools in that neighborhood, C.W. Hill and John W. Pope. My parents did not choose to send me to either one of those schools. There was a small black Catholic school, Our Lady of Lourdes, located right across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church. Can you imagine what it was like to grow up as a little kid every single day walking home and walk past Dr. King's final resting spot? Coming back to CRT. Content of character, not color of skin.
Amen.
But yet, what is the left trying to do? Take us back to color of skin. What the left is trying to say is because you're white, you have a different skin color, you're evil. You're an oppressor. And I'm oppressed, and I'm supposed to be a victim. This is insidious. And so when you have school choice, when you get back to having true education in the United States of America, where we're teaching our kids science, technology, engineering, and math, then we will have better days. You know the Texas State Board of Education? How many members on the Texas State Board of Education?
Too many?
15. 15 members on the Texas State Board of Education. You know the Texas State Board of Education is almost about to flip left? Now, what's the importance of the Texas State Board of Education? Everyone in the United States of America bases their school book purchases and curriculum on what the Texas State Board of Education purchases. That's why Texas is so important. That's why I ain't about us leaving the union. I'm about us leading the union. Okay?
That's right.
All right, let me close on this. Uh-oh. Yes, Molly. Yeah, you told me already that I have to do what you say.
They're smart.
How do the Texas State Board of Education get their jobs?
Use it.
They're elected positions.
When Benjamin Franklin came out of Constitutional Hall, he was met by a woman, a Philadelphia socialite. Probably that Molly back there. She was bold. She came right up to Franklin. She said, well, doctor, what is it that we have? A republic or a monarchy? And Franklin replied, a republic if you can keep it.
Amen.
So that's the responsibility we have. We have sat around and allowed for a political elite class to be developed here all across the United States of America. What our founding fathers never meant for us to have career politicians. They meant it for us to have citizen legislators, citizen servants, that you would go and you would do your service for a period of time, and then you would return to the people from which you were taken. But because of the fact we've been apathetic, we've been complacent, we haven't paid attention. As Benjamin Franklin said, sometimes you get the government that you want, other times you get the government that you deserve. The Greek philosopher Plato once said, one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you shall be governed by your inferiors. What I want you all to do is understand that you're a soldier on the battlefield. You got to figure out your task and purpose. That's what I told soldiers every single day when we were in combat. What is your task and purpose? What is your what and what is your why? If you don't understand your what and your why, you're just an oxygen thief. And we don't need oxygen thieves, especially when we are engaged in an ideological battle for the soul of the great state of Texas, which means the future of the United States of America. So when you come together in these groups, as it says in Proverbs, iron sharpens iron. You got to leave out here a little bit smarter. You got to leave out here a little bit more encouraged. You got to leave out here a little bit more emboldened. And you got to leave out here believing in your heart the exact same oath that men and women have taken over all these years to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the state of Texas. So hopefully, now when someone comes up to you and says, well, that West guy, I don't know why he's running for governor, all this kind of stuff, blah, 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 you can turn around and say, I know why. Because he wants to protect it and defend this Texas Republic for our children and grandchildren. God bless you all.